Hi, this is Miss Morgan on the mic explaining history facts that you may or may not like.
Let's get it started in here.
And the bass keeps running, running, and 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 running, running, and
In the Crusades, the Europeans were running to the Holy Land to try to get control of it. All right, so if you look at the screen, you should add in what I have in red and blue. Obviously, you do not have to use those colors, but that first fact there that was included for you explains why the Crusades started, and the comment in blue started by Christians is just referring to the Crusades in general because the Crusades were started by Christians. So the key fact that starred explains that the Byzantine Emperor Alexius asked Pope Urban for help because some Muslims were taking over parts of the Byzantine Empire, even though the rivals Urban said that he would help. So next up we have the purpose of the Crusades, and that needs to be added with number 2. Pope Urban wanted, etc., that fact. You should add to the left that this is the purpose of the Crusades, to free the Holy Land from Muslim rule. And I would add in what I wrote in red for Muslim rule. Also, this video may go faster than you can write. I'm trying to get under a 15-minute time limit. So if I'm going a little too fast, you should press the pause button. Write down what you need and then unpause it when you're ready to move on. So, why people join the Crusades? Just talks about how they were inspired by preachers, they were very enthusiastic about religion, what knights wanted, and you should write in the fact that starred for number 4. Pope Urban wanted, why did he even initiate the Crusades? He wanted to increase his power in Europe and bring the two churches together, the Catholic Church and the Byzantine Church. RCC stands for Roman Catholic Church. So you should write in B4 to the side. If you see this next section, Fighting a Losing Battle, First Crusade, talks about the First Crusade, and you should write in 1099 if you didn't write that down on your own. That's the year that this happened. It was the only Christian victory, major Christian victory in the Crusades, and so that's why it was significant. You should also write down the part that says that the Crusades were off and on for 200 years. And if you look to the side, I have that written in fancier writing, and that's important to note that they weren't wars and battles that happened in a short amount of time, off and on for 200 years. And then for 1187, it tells you what happened with Muslims regaining control of Jerusalem, and they would keep control of Jerusalem. If you also see to the left side, it says events of the Crusades, so you should write that in as well. These are events of the Crusades because you may have an assignment where knowing what the events of the Crusades were is going to be important. When you're ready to move on to page 2, well, if you need to catch up on page 1, press pause. When you're ready to move on to page 2, that's what you should do. So, number 4 up on page 2 is also an event of the Crusades. The Fourth Crusade is mentioned. The year, this is an event of the Crusade. Crusaders fought against the Byzantine Empire. The Crusaders were from Western Europe, and people from Venice joined up to fight the Byzantine Empire. This shows how horribly wrong the Crusades are going because Christians are fighting themselves in the Fourth Crusade. And the Western Europeans won that battle, that crusade. All right, and then 1291 is when the last Christian city that the Christians had control of was captured by the Muslims. So you need to add in what I have in green and underlined in a fancy line. Crusades were over, Muslims won. That is in 1291. These are all events of the Crusades, 4, 5, and 6. So the next section moves into the effects of the Crusades. So what you should do is write effects, like I did, somewhere on your paper. near the heading. Also, I would highlight or circle the first two bullets because they're pretty important. Bitter feelings between Christians and Muslims and sides being violent towards each other. This is still true in 2018. It was true in 2015, and it is something that has remained part of life since the Crusades, the 1000s, 1100s, and 1200s. Not every Christian, every Muslim, though, dislikes the other religions. So what were these effects? Some have to do with the economy. First one, more trade between the Middle East and Europe, with some specific goods listed there. Second effect, there were boats built for the Crusaders to get to the Holy Land. Once the Crusades were over, what are you going to do with the boats? You're going to use them to trade. And I've listed some goods there. Next up, this has to do with nobles needing money to get to the Holy Land, so they want peasants to become tenant farmers and pay rent to them for the farmland, because then they get the money and they can get to the Holy Land. This led to less peasants being tied to the Lord for life, and that was giving them more independence. And you might want to, I would write a short version of these facts to the side of your paper. Nobles wanting money to get to Holy Land led to peasants being tenant farmers. More effects. The church and monarchs. Monarchs got more power. That would be a good thing to write to the side. Rulers like the ones listed there led crusades, and that led to their names being more widely known.
How do you like it? How do you like it? More, more, more. How do you like it? How do you like it? More, more, more. How do you like it? How do you like it?
The monarchs probably liked it because they got more power. So Catholic Church, papal power was high for a bit, but went down because of the issues with monarchs. Also, the churches were not brought together, and they lost the Crusades. So the Catholic Church's power did not go up, and it went down a little bit. Nothing too crazy. A lot of people are still Catholic and everything, but the Crusades didn't give the Catholic Church control of the Holy Land, so they ultimately didn't achieve their goal of the Crusades. When you're good with page 2, you want to move on to page 3. So this page also has effects. A wider world view just refers to Europe learning more about the rest of the world. New places Christians found out about, listed there. Marco Polo went to China and saw crazy things. At least the Europeans were amazed and thought he was making some of this up. Less cut off from the rest of the world. Europe was less cut off. And eventually a new age of exploration. So you might want to note these different effects in your notes and pause the video if you need to do that, because I'm trying to squeeze this in under 15 minutes. All right, the next topic has to do with the Reconquista, and this happened in Spain. And in the 700s, North African Muslims controlled a lot of present-day Spain. And so the purpose of the Reconquista is listed in that last bullet in this little introductory section. So you should write purpose to the left of that fact. All right. Let's see. First success is listed there when Christians captured Toledo. And then over 200 years, they slowly tried to conquer more cities in Spain and gain control over the Muslims in Spain. And the writing in red here says that the Reconquista lasted about 770 years. So it was off and on, just like the Crusades. And it was just an attempt of Christians to control the Iberian Peninsula, which is Spain and Portugal. But most of these facts focus on Spain. 1300, the Christians are very close to achieving their goal, but they don't control Granada yet. Ferdinand and Isabella get married. What is the point of this fact, Miss Morgan? We don't really care too much that they got married, except this made the army stronger and they were able to capture Granada eventually because they combined their forces. So You need to realize that in 1492, after Granada was captured, the Reconquista was over. Christians controlled the Iberian Peninsula, and they were able to achieve their goal, which was different than the Crusades. The Crusades' goal was not achieved. Okay, so pause the video and go back to other parts if you need to, because I'm trying to squeeze this in under 15 minutes, as I've already said twice. And so when you're good with page 3, it's time to move on to the last page, page 4. Thanks, DJ Khaled. I included that song because the Christians were slowly taking over cities in Spain, and so they could achieve the Reconquista. Also, you might want to put those years in your notes just because it gives a context and shows you how long it took the Christians to control Spain. All right, page 4. All right, page 4, we have Ferdinand and Isabella wanting unity. And so if you look at the heading, Spain expels non-Christians. It's important to have this fact on your paper, so if you don't, you want to write it in. When Muslims ruled Spain, all those religions listed were allowed to worship how they wanted. Isabella stopped this policy and wanted unity, all Christians, which at this point of history is still all Catholics. All right, for the definition of Inquisition, you want to make sure that you have more than what's underlined in red, and I suggest writing the definition for heresy, beliefs going against the Roman Catholic Church. This next little section talks about effects of the Reconquista. Jews and Muslims forced to convert, and then they might be brought to the church court of the Inquisition if they were suspected of practicing their old religions, because they were, in being forced to convert, not all of them, I mean, it wasn't sincere, they were forced to do it or they were going to get killed. If they were found guilty of practicing their old religion, they'd be punished, and this also included being burned at the stake. That is when you get tied to a tall wooden pole and they set you on fire and you're burned at the stake. Not pleasant. And so they were, the Catholics were really trying to keep an eye on Jews and Muslims to make sure they weren't practicing any of their old religions. All right, then what you have is eventually the achievement of religious unity. Once the Christians were able to take over all the cities in Spain, and 150,000 Jews and Muslims left Spain because they didn't want to live in a country where they were being forced to convert and weren't allowed to practice their religions. So some of these people had made contributions to Spain, and they moved out of Spain because of this kind of climate where only one religion was desired, and if you weren't Christian or Catholic, because at this point that's the only type of Christianity that exists in Europe, then you were mistreated and forced to do things.
Get out the way, get out the way, get out the way, move. Get out the way, get out the way, get out the way, move.
That song is connected to the Jews and Muslims leaving Spain. Now would be a great time to go back in the video if you missed something or need to add to your notes somewhere. And so if that's what you need to do, that's what you should do. All right, this is I'm going to close out by saying I may be a mom, but history is still da bomb. Thanks to Ben S. from 2016-17 for that suggestion.